Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me here. Rachel here from Nutrition and Bloom, and happy Monday, or if you're catching the replay of this, happy whatever day it is. Today we are going to talk about sweets, and I am excited to be talking about it right now. So I don't know about you, but this question has been coming up a lot in my community recently. And probably because we go through the holidays and then Valentine's Day is here, and a lot of these we had Halloween, and a lot of these holidays really revolve around food, which is fine. More so than food, candy, and sweets. So I've had this question just a lot recently. How do we handle sweets? Or the question, my child, all they seem to want to eat is sweets. They don't seem to want to eat any other food. So I want to dive into this question a little bit. This video might be a little bit longer than some of the other videos that I've done because I really want to unpack some of the stuff here. So I hope you'll stick around with me, and if you have questions as you're watching this, please feel free to share those kind of as they come up, because I find that this idea of how we handle some of these foods can be really challenging to navigate from a parent perspective, because we want our kids, and I'm going to explain kind of the why behind this. We want our kids to really develop a healthy relationship with sweets, so to speak. And when I say sweets, I'm talking about a lot of foods such as ice cream and cake and candy. And I call these, honestly, I don't like calling them anything. I like calling them what they are. I like saying we're having ice cream, not we're going to have a treat. And I'm going to dive into to a little bit more behind that. But navigating these can be really challenging because um, I don't know if anyone here has noticed. Let me know if this has happened to you, but sometimes the more we try to restrict these, or try to hide these, or we don't want our kids to eat them, that's all they seem to want to eat. So here in this video, I'm going to talk to you about how we can help our kids and help ourselves also just navigate this world of sweets. And I also want to invite you, if this topic resonates with you, if you feel like something I'm talking about here, makes sense, and you want to dive deeper and you want a little more support with this, please reach out to me and we can chat about how I can make that happen. I offer free 15-minute introductory calls where we can chat a little bit more about what you're going through. And I promise you, even in these calls, you're going to get a little bit of clarity. And I can tell you a little bit more about how I can work with you, because this topic in particular, I find that we all come from a different place when it comes to navigating sweets. So I want to start by sharing with you a little bit about my story, and hopefully by sharing this story, it will help you to understand this world a little bit better. So, and I've shared this before in other videos, but I'm going to share it again. So if you've heard it, you'll get to hear it again. So my relationship with food, and what I mean by that is my feelings about food when I was growing up, were not the best. I remember I was probably about 8 or 9 or 10 years old when I went to the doctor for my yearly checkup, and I was told to eat one less banana and, or I'm sorry, one more banana and one less candy bar per week or per day, something like that. And that really stuck with me, that especially the banana and the candy bar, because first of all, the doctor had no idea about what I was eating. And second of all, like, that nutrition advice, we know that it doesn't really make sense. But what stuck with me was that idea that I shouldn't be eating candy, that it wasn't good for my body, that I was wrong for being the way that I was. And I remember probably maybe a week or 2 weeks, or maybe a month after that appointment, I specifically remember I was at our local community pool swimming, and I got a pack of Skittles. And I remember they were the tropical Skittles. I don't know if anybody remembers those. I know they still have them, but I remember when they came out. And I remember eating those Skittles and thinking, like standing there in my bathing suit, in my towel, eating those Skittles and thinking, I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be eating these. The doctor told me not to. Oh, but they taste so good. And that point, I felt like, was this point in my life where I began to have this really unhealthy relationship with food, where I felt like I was being wrong or shameful or bad for eating a certain thing. And when it comes to talking about sweets, that's where that's where I am coming from. I am coming from that place because I don't want kids to have to go through what I went through. And it took me, into my young adult life to really heal that relationship with food. There's so much more I could share with you about a teenager and growing up, but it took me some time to really heal that relationship. And I will say, even now, it's still a work in progress. So what my goal is always for my kids and for everybody's kids that I work with is that they are able to eat some of these foods without guilt, without shame, without judgment, and to know that these foods are available. Because the thing is, sure, we could not give them ice cream or cake or candy or anything, but our goal when it comes to feeding, our overall long-term goal is that they're going to go out into this world and they're going to make these decisions. And the truth of the matter is these foods exist in our food supply and they are plentiful in our food supply. So that's why what we want to do is to try to help them have that healthy relationship with these foods. And when I say healthy, I just mean having a positive relationship with these so that they're not sneaking out trying to get these foods behind our back, or they're hiding, we're finding wrappers or different things in their room. I will say a lot of that can be very normal. So if that is happening, don't worry about it. Okay, let me know and we can try to navigate it. But what we want to do is to create this positive experience when it comes to these sweet foods. So um, that's where I'm coming from when I talk about this. I know that was a long explanation, but I really want to drive the point home as to the why behind my philosophy when it comes to these sweet foods. Um, so, the first thing I just want to kind of mention, and you may have heard me talk about this or you may be new here, but the division of responsibility, that is a feeding framework that I talk a lot about. And it talks about how, as parents, we are responsible for the what, the when, and the where of feeding, and our kids are responsible for the how much and whether of eating. So, what that means is that it is our job to provide the food, to have a time and a place for the food, and it's our kids' job to decide if they're going to eat that food and how much they're going to eat. Now, if you have questions on that or you're new to that concept, let me know and I will tag you in some of my other content around that because there is a lot more that goes into that. But the reason I bring that up here is because when it comes to sweets, especially for some of the younger kids, when we're making a lot of the what and putting the food on the menu, we are going to be responsible for putting it on the menu and having a time and a place. So I say this because I want you to understand that my feeding philosophy is not like this free for all, eat all the sweets all day long, but it's doing it in a way where we're helping our kids to navigate these and to understand that these are part of the food supply. And what we want to do is really offer these sweets. So I'm going to talk about how to offer them, but offering these sweets as a in a neutral way. It is challenging. I'm not going to lie. It is challenging, and most kids really like sweets. Adults do too. And because they've become this symbol of holidays and birthday parties and different things, there is excitement around that. So there's no need to diminish that excitement. It's fine. Let it happen, and it's fine to talk about these foods. There's this whole language of feeding that I love talking about, and talking about how we can um, really help to navigate, to talk about food. What do we like about sweets? How do they taste? What are some of the flavors that come out? Just like we would want to do with other foods too. It's okay to talk about those. But what we want to do is offer these foods and offer them. A lot of parents ask me, well, how often should I offer dessert? How often should I offer these foods? That's really a personal preference. So I'm going to let you make a decision. Some parents like to have them once a day, some once every other day, some a few times a week. Um, for our family, we offer them, maybe a few times a week, but I don't have a strict kind of rule around like 3 days a week or Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Some of you might want to have a little bit more structure around that because it feels a little bit better for you, and that's fine too. And again, I can help you kind of navigate some of that stuff. But we want to be offering these foods. And we want to offer them, I will say, regularly. And we sometimes want to offer them where they're going to be offered without limits. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So we want to offer these foods, offer them maybe 1 or 2 times a week, maybe 3. You might go to the grocery store and your child asks you to get a box of cookies. You might buy those cookies and bring them home and offer them. You also might go to the grocery store and cookies aren't on your shopping list for the day, and you might say, oh, we're not getting cookies, but the next time we go, those will be on the list. I know not a lot of us aren't really shopping with our kids these days, but that's just kind of an example. So we want to offer these foods. Now, I will say that occasionally I recommend when you're offering some of these foods to offer them in unlimited quantities, just like you would other food. Remember that division of responsibility. So that might mean you have a box of maybe some small cookies, and you might allow your child to eat as much as they want, maybe once a week or twice a week or whatever that might look like for you. Now, when you offer that food, I want you to go back to the division of responsibility. I would have it at the table, sitting down, without distractions, right? And maybe take the cookies, put them into a serving bowl, and also serve them with fruit or some milk or some other, like a vegetable in dip. So you're going to serve them with some other nutritious foods as well. And if your child wants more cookies, to let them have more cookies at that occasion. Now, the reason that you're doing that again is because you want them to know that sometimes it's fine to have as much as you want. And what I will say that I have found happen with a lot of families is when they first start doing this, their child goes a little crazy, right? Because it's like, well, how do I know you're always going to be doing this? How do I know that this isn't the last time I'm ever going to get these cookies? That's okay. That's so normal. So what we want to do is to not judge them, not shame them around that food, but to um, let them have that occasionally. Okay, and another kind of reasoning behind this is, I've heard a lot of adults say, well, I don't keep ice cream in the house because if I did, I would just eat the whole thing in one serving. What we want to try to teach our kids is that, sometimes it's okay to have as much as you want. You can stop when you feel full or when you feel ready to be done, giving them that autonomy, and then knowing that there is going to be more available. So I think some of us have gotten into that mentality, maybe the diet mentality or the like forbidden food mentality, where if I eat all of this, I'm not going to have more tomorrow. Or like the Last Supper, if anyone's heard of that idea, where you're going to start a diet, but then the day before you eat the entire carton of ice cream, when maybe if you knew that ice cream would be available anytime you wanted it, you wouldn't eat so much. Okay, and I'm starting to get into this concept of intuitive eating, which I'm not really going to go into here, but that's this idea of eating, of satisfying our body and eating from a place of love, to be honest, and eating from a place of kindness to our body as well. So that's one idea with the sweets. The other thing that I just want to talk about is to not talk about these foods as good or bad, and food in general shouldn't be good or bad. I really want to emphasize the point that food is just food. And when we start putting labels on food, it can lead to guilt and shame around these foods. And especially for young kids who developmentally might internalize some of the things that we're saying. So if cookies are bad, I am bad for eating them. Now, that's kind of taking it to the extreme, but I just want to give you some examples of what that might look like and the why behind not labeling these foods as good or bad. I would also recommend not labeling these foods as junk food or treats, even. I mean, treats you might say, but then if you're going to call these foods treats, I would also talk about going to the beach as a treat, or going to the park as a treat, or going sledding as a treat. Like, using it so it doesn't become this really special thing. We want to teach them that this is food. And of course, you all know I'm a dietitian. Of course, I promote healthy, nutritious foods, but they're going to get so many of these messages about what's healthy, what's nutritious. And we have this opportunity to just normalize all food right now. And there are still ways, and I'll talk about that in other videos, but there are still ways to make other foods feel fun and make broccoli feel fun and exciting, because that's our ultimate goal, is for kids to want to eat those foods. So, with that and kind of the not labeling food, I also would recommend not using food as a reward. And I know it's hard because it works a lot of times, right? If we say, eat your broccoli, you get a piece of candy, or eat this, then you get that. However, I want you to remember the long term, and like thinking about what you might be promoting in the long term. And the long term is, we want them to eat the broccoli because they like the broccoli. Even if they're eating the broccoli right now, when they go out with their friends, are they going to choose the broccoli? You know, probably not if you're bribing them or using food as a reward for food. So I typically don't recommend using food as a reward in general. I will, if you have questions on that, let me know, because I know that some people are doing that, and every family is a little bit different. But that's what I would think about. If you are going to have dessert, I would have dessert not be contingent on the meal that they ate, because you don't want to put pressure on them to eat. They either get dessert or they don't get dessert, but it doesn't have to do with how much they ate, because again, that's putting pressure on them. And this is a topic that I've definitely talked about, so if you have questions on that, I can tag you in that video. But decreasing that pressure is going to help immensely at mealtime. And then finally, what I want to mention is to sometimes serve sweets with a meal. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but when there were times in the past, or I've heard this from a lot of families, where they're with their kids and all their child can talk about during the mealtime is, when am I getting my sweet? When am I getting my candy? When am I getting my candy? And kind of drives you a little crazy. So if you just serve the candy with the rest of the meal, you're just saying, eat it with the meal. Now, this is probably not a time where you're going to want to serve unlimited sweets, right? Because then they might just eat the sweets, but you might give them a bit of candy with the rest of their meal. Sure, they might eat that candy first, but they also might surprise you in terms of how they eat their food. And again, we want to take away the pressure. We don't want them to feel like they need to eat a certain amount at mealtime. Um, so those are my comments, my ideas, my real philosophy on sweets. And I want you to remember, if you've hung in here this long and been watching, thank you so much. But I want you to go back to that beginning part on the why we want to offer these foods and not make it a big deal. And to think about that division of responsibility on how to offer those in a way that makes food just feel like food. If you've enjoyed this, again, I would love to dive deeper with you. My program, Conquering Mealtimes, it's my group course, and it has been amazing. We've talked about, every concept related to feeding, but especially this topic, because so much of this comes from us and comes from our mindset, and comes from where we come from. And I think parenting is hard enough in general. And I think feeding kids just adds this extra layer, because many of us may not have grown up with the best relationship with food, kind of like what I shared with you at the beginning of this talk. So when it comes to feeding, having some coaching around this for you helps immensely with your kids, because once we feel more relaxed and like really feel more relaxed and feel more confident, you will notice that your child responds to that, and feeding just becomes so much easier. So let me know if you have any questions on this or anything else that I have shared with you today. It has been my pleasure sharing my talk about sweets with you, and I look forward to connecting with you soon. Have a great rest of your day. Oh, and before I end, I see one more question came in. How old would you start offering sweets? That is a really great question from Jackie. And when it comes to ages, there's no like set in stone right or wrong way to do this. I've seen usually around maybe like 2.5, 3 years of age, families start offering sweets. Um, it also really depends on your environment. For a lot of kids I've seen a lot of kids who go to preschool maybe around 2 years of age, so they start being exposed to some of these sweeter foods, maybe like yogurt or something like that. For some kids who are maybe home longer, they're not exposed to these foods earlier on, so that's okay too. I will also say for second children, a lot of times they are exposed earlier on because their older sibling is already eating these foods. So I would I would say, usually maybe 2 or 3 years old, but there would not be a reason to say, oh, right at 2, you have to start offering sweets, or you have to start offering candy, or anything like that. So I want you to use your judgment as well. We all have an innate preference for sweet. If you've ever tasted breast milk or formula, you may have known that it's sweet tasting. So we all have an innate preference for sweet. So it's not that you need to introduce sugar. You can definitely wait closer to 3 years of age if you're just cooking food at home, and if you want to offer sweeter food and you don't want to offer sugar, you can sweeten food with bananas or dates or applesauce. I have tons of recipes on my blog where I do that too. So that's a really great question. So I would say it depends. I would not be in a rush to do it, but if you go to a birthday party and your child is exposed to it, it's totally fine. So I hope that makes sense. Um, Let me know if you have questions or more questions on that, because I think that is a really great question. And again, we can kind of navigate through that and navigate through your specific situation too. So thank you for adding that question, Jackie. Um, okay, I am going to sign off now, but thank you for watching, and I look forward to chatting with you and connecting with you soon. Bye.